Hello. The story I want to tell you today takes place in California, USA, a country with a strong and diverse economy. California is known as a center of technology, entertainment, and culture. Los Angeles and San Francisco, both located in California, are vibrant and globally renowned urban centers. The main character of the story, Jaycee Dugard. She was born on May 3, 1980. Jaycee was a smart and beautiful girl. She lived with her mother and stepfather. Her life was very happy. Her mother and stepfather loved her very much. Initially, her family lived in Acalia, Los Angeles, but later, her parents wanted to find a safer community for their children, so they moved to the town of Mayer, about 700 kilometers away. On June 10, 1991, it was a Monday morning. Jaycee's mother, Terry Probin, who worked as a bookkeeper at a printing house, had gone to work early that morning. At just 11 years old, she was wearing her favorite pink outfit and walking alone from her house to the school bus stop. Halfway there, a gray car approached her and rolled down its window. She thought the man had stopped to ask for directions, so she walked straight towards it. Unexpectedly, the man in the car used a taser to attack her, stunning her. Then, a woman got out of the car, quickly lifted her into the car, and drove away. The area was not far from her house. Coincidentally, her stepfather, Probin, witnessed his daughter being dragged into the car right outside their house. He rushed after the car, but it was too late. Not only did he fail to catch up, but he couldn't even see the license plate clearly, only knowing there were two people in the car, one of whom was a woman. He immediately called the police. The American police responded quickly. Within hours, local media outlets were constantly reporting the incident. Reporting on the incident and appealing to the public for attention, the police hoped for nationwide cooperation to rescue the girl as soon as possible. A large force of police officers, helicopters, and police dogs were deployed. In addition, many volunteers joined the search team. Unfortunately, no clues were found. The police also relied on descriptions from Jaycee's classmates and stepfather to create a composite sketch of the suspect. However, the distance they saw was too great to guarantee the accuracy of the sketch. A few days later, tens of thousands of flyers and posters were sent to businesses across the United States. Because Jaycee's favorite color was pink, the town was covered with pink ribbons as a reminder of her disappearance and as a show of community support for Jaycee's family to continue expanding their influence. Her mother even established an organization called Jaycee's Hope to thank the volunteers and those who helped raise funds. The t-shirt, sports jacket, and missing person posters for Jaycee were widely circulated. Even a singer specially composed a song for her. The incident quickly attracted nationwide attention in the United States and even appeared on the popular American television show, America Mode. Unfortunately, despite everyone's best efforts, Jaycee could not be found. In despair, the police began to wonder if the culprit was someone she knew, and their first thought was her stepfather, as he was a direct witness. If he was the mastermind, it would be understandable that the police couldn't find her. The police then brought Jaycee's stepfather to the station for questioning. They also conducted a lie detector test, but found nothing unusual, so they removed him from their list. The second suspect the police considered was her biological father, Ken Layton. They suspected that perhaps Ken Layton wanted his daughter to stay with him and had used some coercive methods, but after, the investigation revealed that Ken didn't even know he had a child. It turned out he and Jaycee's mother had been in a relationship, but they later broke up. Jaycee's mother also never revealed that she had a child, so the biological father of Jaycee was also ruled out as a suspect, because no one else could be found. The case stalled for years, and over time, it gradually faded into oblivion. People rumored that Jaycee might have been abandoned in some desolate place and was no longer alive. Despite many people's beliefs, Jaycee's mother didn't give up. She always insisted that her daughter was still alive. Missing notices for Jaycee were distributed, totaling over £1 million. Over time, people even used technology to create simulations of her appearance as an adult. But Jaycee seemed to have vanished from the world without a trace. So where did she really go? What terrible things did she go through? Next, we will rewind time and return to that fateful day, the 10th. The 10th of June, 1991. On that day, after being dragged into a car, she vaguely heard a conversation between a man and a woman. Oh my God, we actually caught it and escaped successfully. Unbelievable. When she fully regained consciousness, she was about 180 kilometers from her home. At that moment, the world before her eyes completely changed. She was held in a dilapidated warehouse surrounded by a series of tattered tents, covered with plastic sheets, filled with old things and garbage. At first glance, it looked like an abandoned backyard, unnoticed by anyone. The people who brought her there were a deranged couple. The husband was Phillips, a radio operator, and the wife was, well, let's just say Phillips had a criminal record. He was born in California in 1951. After finishing high school at the age of 21, he assaulted a 4-year-old girl and molested her. Even after being caught, the girl's family, to protect their daughter's honor, did not release her. She testified in court, which helped Philip escape legal punishment. Later, Philip went on to marry her. During their time together, he repeatedly assaulted his wife, causing her to want a divorce. He wanted to force her to stay with him. Finally, she sought legal recourse, and they successfully divorced. In 1976, Philip, 25, kidnapped a 2-year-old woman named Catherine. She was held in a warehouse for 5 years and subjected to sexual abuse. A patrolling police officer noticed a car parked outside the warehouse and, feeling suspicious, went inside to investigate. This brought the matter to light. Facing Catherine's testimony in court, he was powerless to defend himself and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. Strangely, while he was imprisoned, NNC frequently visited her uncle in prison. She fell in love with Philip, and the two developed a relationship. On the 5th, in October 1981, Nancy and Philip miraculously married in prison. On the 26th of August, 1988, after 11 years in prison, Philip was granted temporary release for rehabilitation and fitted with an electronic ankle monitor. The local prosecutor's office regularly visited his home to prevent him from committing further crimes. However, he showed no remorse and wanted to commit more crimes. His wife, seemingly mentally unstable, not only didn't stop him but also agreed to participate. The couple drove around the city together, and coincidentally, they spotted Philip walking alone on the street. Without hesitation, they attacked Jaycee and finally trapped her in a soundproof warehouse in the backyard, a recording studio built by Philip himself, so no one would hear even if Jaycee screamed. Then he handcuffed her and forced her to undress, telling her not to scream or leave the warehouse, saying her parents didn't want her, that she was a... The homeless woman outside had a pack of large guard dogs to watch her house. If she dared to escape, the dogs would tear her to pieces. During the first week, Jaycee was still handcuffed, and the only person she had contact with was Philip. He occasionally brought her some fast food and talked to her. He gave her a bucket to use for toileting. He slept with her at least once a week for 3 years. After that, Philip didn't allow her to write alone. He didn't even allow her to mention her own name, and they gave her a fake name, Elisa. Then Philip brought her a television, but only allowed her to watch shopping channels, and she had no idea that everyone was watching. The 4th of March, 1994, Philip unexpectedly brought her some cooked food. This was the first time she had eaten anything other than cheap food since her imprisonment. He changed his treatment of her, because at that time, she had a child with him. Jaycee was only 13 then. The Filipino man wouldn't take her to the hospital. He only searched for information and taught her the necessary skills for childbirth. On the 18th of August, 1994, Jaycee gave birth to her first daughter, and she smiled, a smile she had long lost, because finally she had a companion. She took very good care of her daughter, learning from what she had seen on television. In 1997, Jaycee gave birth to her second daughter, To have more space for the two children to live, the Filipino man built a large tent in the backyard. Jaycee was allowed out of the room and brought the babies into the tent. Although the two children were born to Jaycee, to please his wife, Philip made the two children the Nance and the older sister, while Jaycee took on the role of the older sister. He felt that the only way for the children to grow up was to deceive the investigation, and, in fact, everyone thought the two children were his own, and they had no suspicions. By 2009, 18 years had passed since then. Jake was arrested. His mother never gave up. And finally, a new turning point appeared. On the 24th of August, 2009, Philip went to the FBI office in San Francisco and left a note outlining his views on religion and gender, mainly describing that he had realized his past mistakes and that he would no longer commit crimes. He could help others do the same. Furthermore, he brought his two daughters to the University of California campus to ask to teach religion. This process, coincidentally, involved the university's police department. At that time, he met department head Lisa Campbell. During the meeting with Philip, she considered him an eccentric. She also noticed that the two girls Philip brought were behaving very strangely. Both seemed afraid of Philip and were always sullen. They were very reserved and extremely submissive to Philip. Lisa felt something was wrong and, being cautious, asked Philip to sign a document. He returned. The following day, she secretly asked a police officer to investigate him thoroughly. After the investigation, she discovered that Philip was a man with a long criminal record. The following afternoon, Philip returned to the 2 p.m. appointment with his two daughters, and they noticed that the girls looked very pale, as if they hadn't been exposed to sunlight for a long time. Shortly afterward, Lisa contacted Philip's probation officer to find out more about the situation. When the probation officer heard that Philip had brought the two children, they broke out in a cold sweat because, given his past crimes, he was prohibited from living with minors. Therefore, investigators went to Philip's house to investigate his relationship with the two girls. However, they only found his wife, Nancy, and his elderly mother at home. The two girls were nowhere to be found. Philip later explained that the two girls were his children, and since their parents had agreed to let him take them to university, the investigators then asked him to bring them along. The children and their parents came to the temporary release room to explain the situation, and the next day, the 26th of August, 2009, Philippines and her two daughters came to the temporary release room. There, Philippines, his relatives, and the two girls, Elisa Jaycee's daughters, also admitted that she was Alice and that the two girls were her daughters. She also said that Philip was a good man, that he treated her very well, and that her two daughters also chimed in, saying that Philip was very good to them. Looking at the context, it seemed that Philip was a good man. This was because Philippines had prepared for such situations the day before. However, when investigators tried to verify Jaycee's identity, problems arose. To find the truth, the investigators questioned the mother and her two daughters. When pressured to provide details that could confirm her identity, Jaycee became extremely defensive and agitated. The investigators then called in additional police officers to investigate. Finally, in front of the police, Jaycee mustered the courage to reveal her real name. She said that 18 years ago, she was kidnapped and held captive in the backyard of a Filipino couple, unable to escape. The police were shocked to hear the story and immediately ordered the couple to lick her feet. When Jaycee's mother received the call from the police, her emotions overwhelmed her. She couldn't believe she would see her daughter again after 18 years of searching. The two reunited, and Jaycee hugged her mother and cried. Fortunately, both Jaycee and her daughter were in good health at the time. Her stepfather was very happy to see her again, although the police had ruled him out as a suspect. However, many people suspected him of being the culprit, so he had endured a lot of hardship. The police then went to the area where Jaycee had been held captive. The scene astonished them. The conditions there were terrible. In the backyard were two makeshift shacks, surrounded by a lot of trash and discarded belongings. Next to them was a gray car, the one Phillips used to take her away. The room where Jaycee lived was extremely dilapidated. It's unbelievable that she spent 18 years in such an environment, raising 2 daughters alone. Shortly after, Philip was charged with 29 crimes. Initially, he pleaded not guilty, but faced with the evidence, he also pleaded guilty. On the 2nd of June 2011, under Philippine state law, Philip was sentenced to 431 years in prison, while Nank was sentenced to 36 years in prison. However, the case is still unresolved, because many people indirectly caused the tragedy. Philip was a repeat offender. After being released on parole, he was under government supervision. According to official records, the parole department regularly sent people to check Philip's house. Since Jaycee was arrested, investigators have entered Philip's house 60 times, but they never found anything. There were no unusual traces in the backyard, and besides, the police didn't consider him a suspect because his house was only a 2-hour drive from Jaycee's house. Furthermore, in 1976, he had committed a crime against a girl near Nam Ho, where Jaycee lived. The police overlooked too many clues. In 2002, the fire department received a call reporting that a child in the Philippines family had been injured while swimming, and Phillips had no children. But the fire department didn't report the news to the emergency department, and no one investigated the child's identity. In 2006, Philippines' neighbors also called the police to say they saw children living in the backyard of his house. An officer then went to see Philippines and spoke with him for 30 minutes. However, the backyard was still not searched. It can be said that this was also part of the irresponsibility and negligence of the police and authorities. Jax lived in hell for 18 years because of the above reasons. In 2010, the California state government decided to compensate Rashi $20 million for their negligence. The local police chief also issued a public statement expressing his apology. Jaycee's family subsequently sued the U.S. government, alleging that Phillips had been drinking and using illicit drugs while on parole. This was a violation of the parole order, and the order should have been revoked, sending him back to prison. If the authorities had enforced the order properly, Jaycee would not have been arrested. However, the lawsuit was dismissed by the U.S. court in 2010. Jaycee established the JCD Foundation to support families of victims who had suffered severe psychological trauma. In July 2011, Jaycee published a memoir based on his own experiences. It's sad and moving to read. 18 long years in prison meant what it meant to an 1-year-old girl. The long period of control and brainwashing had caused. Jaycee couldn't trust outsiders and didn't dare easily reveal her true identity after returning to her family. Jaycee went through a difficult period, but with the help and kindness of her family, she quickly emerged from the darkness and lived happily with them. In July 2016, Jaycee published her second book, Freedom. Her first book, My First Book, mainly tells the story of her life after being rescued and how she recovered and reintegrated into the world. She hopes that through this book, it can help some survivors who have gone through similar experiences. To this day, I still believe that each of us holds the key to our own happiness. Try to hold on to it as much as possible. This video ends here, and I'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye.